What is going on, everyone? It's your boy Gsluke here with our round two preview for props and betting for the Sony Open. Gonna make sure you're ready for all of your exposure Friday. But first off, a look at the weather report, some pin locations out there for round two, and then afterwards, we'll look through some shots gained metrics and value over there at Underdog and Prize Picks. Now I'm entering out there for the second round of action. But hopefully, you guys are having a fantastic Thursday yourself and are ready to talk some golf out here for tomorrow. We got Joseph down there. It says mahalo, bro. I think that's a Hawaiian word or something like that. You'll have to let me know, but welcome on in. We also got Brian down there as well. I'm sorry that my camera seems to be completely out of focus. Maybe I can get that fixed for you guys here in a second, but let's go ahead and hop on into this thing. So let me bring up some of the averages from today. And speaking of, let me wipe this camera down and see if we can get it to not look like it's in like 280p or something like that. Let me see. It looks a lot better now on that end. Let's talk through this a little bit. So scoring averages for round number one. It says round two at the top. That's a little bit of a typo. The round one scoring average was about one stroke under par. This ended up happening before the end of round one, as there's still 7 golfers that are left on the golf course. So tomorrow morning, they're going to end up finishing play, and it could impact the scoring average here a little bit. But this is going to give us a really good measure for how the course is playing. It's firm in the fairways. It's soft on the greens. And though the rough is maybe a little bit more substantial this year, those soft greens led to some solid scoring, even with 15 to 20 mile an hour winds. So I thought it might play closer to even, maybe even half a stroke under par. But it ended up playing a little bit easier than that because of the soft greens. Now, as the week goes on, I think you're going to see the greens firm up a little bit, tend to get a little bit harder to hold. So the scoring might get harder as we get closer to Sunday. That is, of course, unless we get a lot of rain in the area overnight. So I think these averages pretty spot in line with what we're going to see out there for Friday, because if we bring up the weather forecast, it also looks pretty breezy out there. So with the soft conditions, maybe it starts to firm up a little bit for tomorrow, but I think something around 0.75 under par is where I put the scoring average out there for Friday. So your birdie average might go slightly down with the wind gusts going up like 2-3 miles an hour. The bogey average might go slightly up with the slightly higher winds, but you're talking about a marginal difference at the very most. So that's why I think these averages out there from today could be especially useful for our exposure tomorrow, as I don't think they're going to change all that much. So we'll circle back to this when we start talking about the actual prop boards. You can see the fairway average there at about 7.5 per round. That was nearly about half a fairway lower than what we had last year. And then the green regulation average actually went up about 2.2 greens per round. So, I mean, that shows you the firm fairways there with the average going down to 7.5. And it also shows you that even with the windy conditions, they hit more greens because they were a lot softer than what you had there last year. And I couldn't exactly tell you why the fairways are firm and the greens are soft. It's not like one area got rain and obviously the fairways didn't. That's not how it works. Obviously, the whole course got about the same amount of water. I'm assuming it has to do with a sand base over there on the soil or something in the fairways. I'll have to do a little bit more deep diving to get the reason for all of that. But you heard that from reporters heading into the week, and the stat averages would certainly indicate that that was the case. Going back to the weather, I do want to deep dive the NEM forecast, which out of these 5 seems to be the most reliable. It looks pretty breezy out there, and especially from the wind gust perspective. So when you're looking at all 5, we got a good measure for the sustained winds. But what you'll see down here in this NEM model is that the wind gusts, even early on, are going to be in that 20 to 25 mile an hour range. Now, that was what we saw for most of the afternoon. And if we go to a site like Data Golf and take a look at the morning versus afternoon scoring, you'll see that it was about 0.2 strokes easier during the morning hours. Tomorrow, because the wind gusts are expected to be breezy pretty much from the time they say go, I don't know if it's going to be that same sort of edge. I don't think it's going to be a 0.2 shot advantage towards the morning. In fact, there's a chance that if the winds die down as the day goes on, it's not really the sustained winds that you see dying down in this model. It's more so the wind gusts that go from about 25 miles an hour to closer to 20 there by the afternoon. That kind of difference and the higher temperatures could actually make that either an even draw or maybe a slightly better draw towards the PM guys. So I want to point out this NEM model because it's a little bit different than some of the others. I guess the point of all this is to show you that the weather tomorrow is going to be shitty no matter when you're teeing off. Some of them look decent in the morning, but you have ones like this NEM model over here on the right that look like it's dreadful over there during those morning hours. So ECM looks like the morning is pretty breezy. breezy, maybe a little bit breezier in the afternoon. Over here on this ECM model, this GFS model looks pretty flat throughout the day. The highest wind gusts and the highest sustained winds in this GFS model are towards midday, so not really in the AM or the PM wave. It's probably like the last 2 hours of the AM that looks breezy there than the first 2 hours of the PM wave. Icon model looks pretty flat, and then this Medio Blue model looks a little bit worse in the PM side of things. So, there's a few saying the PM will be breezier. There's one that's saying the AM will be breezier. Then a few that are kind of a mixed bag, right? They don't really tell us all that much. So I don't really think it's the kind of slate where you take like unders for the morning guys on strokes and then you take overs for the guys on the PM. It looks like a pretty consistent set of conditions. And that minus 0.75 scoring average that I was talking about before could be used both for the morning and the afternoon tee times. We'll talk about the shots gained metrics quite a bit when we go through actual plays later. But what I'm going to focus on before we actually go into the prop boards, which we have posted over here in Prize Picks. Not sure if Underdog is posted quite yet. I'll refresh it to see if they have theirs up. So Underdog still hasn't quite gotten their board up, but we're going to go through all the Prize Picks props a little bit later on after going through some of these pin locations, which if you're new to the channel, you might not know that pin locations are a big deal with golf, but they're probably one of the biggest deals when it comes to the props because we can really get an idea ahead of time how the course is going to play. Certain pin setups, lead to more birdies. Sometimes a little bit more risk reward where you might see more birdies, but also more bogeys and that kind of setup. We're going to quickly go through these. We're not going to spend a whole hour going through these pin locations, but I want to get a good taste for what these players are going to face. So let me bring up hole one. Let me bring up the shot tracker view. And let me see if there's anyone else down there in chat. What's going on, Kim? Says good call on Mitchell being a birdie bum. Yeah, that's why I didn't end up betting him, right? He's been out of form. He might turn it around for you in round two, but that's the kind of sketchy form I try and stay away from. So yeah, we'll talk through the shots gained metrics, Kim. I think the main thing I want to focus on, if you're taking a positive stance play, or how they hit the ball in round number one. If they were sustainable off the tee and on approach, those are the kind of guys you want to back. So I tried to give you the warning on that. Obviously, sometimes shit happens, right? When you go out there and take a play. But yeah, we'll learn on that going forward, right? Obviously, guys out of form aren't going to be as good of plays, so we'll account for that, right? So let's go through this a little bit. So hole number one's here in the back left. Round number one, it was in the front right, which I would say is an easier pin location, but it's not a drastically difficult one there in the back left. You do have enough room to move the ball close to the hole, so I think you'll see more bogeys to this back left pin location, just because it is a little bit of a longer hole, a little bit more demanding with your second shot. Also, if you miss in that back bunker, it'd be a real difficult up and down, but I also think you're going to see the birdie count go up as well. So hole number one, probably a neutral in terms of its change of scoring, but maybe more birdies and more bogeys there on the first hole. Next up, we got hole two. This one is going to be in the front middle, maybe tucked towards the right bunker a bit here in about where my cursor is. This pin location is significantly easier than what they had for round number one. Round one was tucked just over this bunker to the right, as you can see. Over here, it's a lot less protected by that greenside bunker, and it looks like there's a little bit of slope that you can work it off of too. And, there's not a ton here, but you can see those little ticks moving downwards at that portion of the green. And because it's only a 420-yard hole, you can conceivably go out there and spin a wedge back. So I think that's going to be a little bit easier scoring out there for tomorrow. Let's go to hole three now. So hole three is in the back middle. So this is probably, this is a neutral pin location, I would say. So at first I was going to say it's a harder pin location just because it's in the back. It's a little bit close to that bunker that you have tucked just to the left of where that pin is going to be. But the thing I think that makes this neutral rather than a harder pin location is that it's not tucked near the water, right? Round one, it might have been slightly more accessible. You did have quite a few birdies there at hole number three. In the back middle, though, it's not going to lead to a lot of water balls. You're not going to have as many doubles, not as many bogeys to that sort of pin location. And unless you're pulling it long left, I don't think it's going to be that troublesome of a pin location. So hole three will go neutral, might even be easier than what we had for round number one. Hole 4 is a front left pin location. This is all going to come down to tee box. If they play it from the tips, I think it'll be just about what we had for the first day. If they leave the tee box up, which just to show you guys, they did move up the tee box 1 tee box for the first round. If it's played from back here, it's going to play an extra 15, 20 yards. So that front pin location doesn't really shorten the hole up all that much, as that's about the difference from where the pin was today to where it's going to be tomorrow. But if they do keep the tee box up at least 1 tee box, then this front pin location would be pretty favorable. It's got a little bit of a false front that you have to contend with, but it'd be a much shorter club. You'd be hitting like 160, 170 yards in, which this hole, by the way, was one of the top 5 hardest holes on the golf course. It might go to about an average hole if that were to be the case. Which unfortunately, there's no way for us to know ahead of time what they're doing with the tees, but it's worth mentioning both scenarios, I suppose. Hole number 5 is going to be in the middle right. It's just above this little slope that you can see in the middle of the green. So this would be a harder pin location, partially because it's further back in the green, but also because you don't have this back slope over here on the left to work with, and you have a slight false front to contend with as well. So that's the first one that I would say is harder than what we had for the first day. Hole 6 is over here to the left side of the green, so it's on top of this little slope. You do have a side slope to the left that could help you get it close, but you do have a slope on the other side as well that's going to move you further from the pin location if you miss on that side. So this is I would say about the same sort of pin location as what we had for the first day. You can see over here to the right, it is in a little bit of a bowl. If you missed a little short, you bounced up pretty close to that pin location, but it was also tucked just over a bunker. So I would say a neutral pin. I like the side slope to the left, but that slope down the middle of this green is it's going to make it hard to birdie unless you hit a perfect shot there at hole number 6. Hole 7 is a middle right pin location. So it's over here kind of towards this bunker on the right side. There's a slope down the middle of the green that'll help you get closer to the pin location, but it's not close enough to where it's going to make it an easy birdie look. So I would say that this pin location is pretty much the exact same as what we had for the first day. My apologies there, guys. But as I was saying, the first day it was over here on the left side, pretty much the same depth in the green. It was tucked over here towards the left bunker. It's just going to be that the bunker's on the right side this time around. So I don't think it's really any different than what we had for today, but definitely worth looking at. Let's go to hole 8. So 8's over here on the left side. This is a par 4, medium length par 4. It's harder than what you had for today. The reason I say that is today's pin location is as easy as it possibly gets out there for hole 8. Unprotected by really any bunkers, front pin location, shorter hole. So you're hitting a wedge, maybe a pitching wedge 9-iron into this sort of green, and it's sloped back into you. So I would say this pin location over here to the left is definitely going to be a little bit more demanding than what we had for round number 1. And yeah, we've had 1, 2 that might be easier than a handful that have been harder as well. So kind of hard to say with any certainty what we're getting with these pins yet. Hole 9, we have a front right pin location. This is an easier birdie look than what we had for round 1, but it's worth noting that this round 1 pin location was not a difficult one. So it's not going to be a massive difference in the scoring. Hole 10 is in the back left. This is a harder pin location than what we had for round 1. Round 1, it was here in the front right, which meant driving the green could be viable. If you got it up within 30, 40 yards of the surface, you could chip up and hit it to like, I don't know, 7 to 15 feet is what most players were hitting it to. Now that it's on the back left, you can't really take on that driver as easily unless they move up the tee box, which they'll probably do on moving day. I doubt that they're going to do it for round 2. But because it's on this little bit of a ledge just over this false front, it's not really a false front because it's in the middle of the green, but you get the point, this big slope there in the middle of the green. This second tier makes it a little bit harder. Let's go to 11. 11 is over here on the right side. So it's just over this bunker. You probably got 5 paces to work with until you get to the pin location. I would say that this is a neutral pin compared to round 1. This round 1 pin was one of the harder pins that you have. And this pin, because it is tucked just over the sand bunker, I don't want to say it's an easy one. It's also maybe slightly easier than what you had for round 1. This is probably the hardest pin that we're going to see all week. This is probably the second hardest pin that you have there at hole 11. Hole 12 is in the middle left. This is a medium length par 4. It's over here on the left side. I would say a little bit easier than round one just because it's a shorter distance, hence shorter club into the green. And also there's really nothing protecting that sort of pin location. 13 is a really tricky hole. 13's in the back, right? Oh, this is going to be fun. So this is like a 500-yard par 4 when you're playing to this pin location. And it's not like this one was easy because it was still tucked 4 paces over there from the left bunker. But this one in the back corner, I know there's no real bunker that you'd be hitting it into, unless, of course, you hit it short, one of these 2 greenside ones. But this is a long, demanding shot. The tee shot is really hard, too. Like, if we go back to the tee shot, it is super easy to hit it where Harry Hall did here, over here on the left side. And to that back pin, I mean, Harry Hall to today's pin, he had 221, right? And that was with not that much wind out there in the morning. To the pin location tomorrow, that's like a 250-yard shot out of the rough. So, a lot of par 5s, people aren't even making birdie from 250 out of the rough. That would be essentially to try to go out there and make par on this kind of hole. 14 is a back right pin location. It's about right where my cursor is here on the right. I would say about the same kind of pin location as what we had for round one. The round one pin location was far enough from the bunker that it wasn't that much in play. And the one for tomorrow doesn't have that much protecting it either. Hole 15 is 400 yards. It is on the middle left, I would say. It's kind of hard to describe these pin locations because they're not square shaped and they're kind of, weirdly shaped all across the board. But it's also over here on the left side. It's a little bit further up than the pin location for round number 1. So I would say a little bit easier just because it is a shorter shot in. And it's essentially the same look though. So yeah, not a big difference compared to what we had today. 16 is a middle right pin location, so it's over here, a little bit shorter than what you had from round 1. Once again, shorter shot in, so I guess a little bit easier, but it's the same side of the green, and it's protected by essentially the same set of hazards. So I don't think it's going to be that much of a difference compared to round 1, but it is a little bit shorter. 17 is over here in the middle left, and look how similar these back 9 pin locations are. Frankly, what the hell are they doing? The last 3 pins, I don't know if you guys have noticed, they're the same except they're moved to 5 paces. Not sure what the tour staff is doing out here. There's no way that they did that on purpose. They probably just don't know what they're doing or don't know that they are setting it up that way 2 days in a row. But yeah, the pin location was right there. It's just 4 paces to the side, a little bit further up the green. So not a big difference like you've had on the last few holes. It's interesting to me. And then finally, 18 is going to be a front middle pin location, which it is getting you a little close to this bunker. If you short side yourself in the bunker, I guess that would be a trickier shot. But over here on the right side, if you're in that bunker, it's a longer bunker shot. So I don't think it's a harder pin location than what you had for today. And if you're outside of that bunker, it's probably an easier up and down to the middle of the green, especially if you're missing here on the far left side. So I would say the scoring average might get slightly better here at hole number 18, but I'm not expecting a whole lot of movement. And because 15, 16, and 17 are pretty much the same pin, I mean, you're not going to see much of a difference there at all. So let me actually bring up Data Golf. I'll show you guys the scoring average on those holes because my guess would be it's not going to change very much out there for tomorrow. Here's Data Golf, by the way, so I can show you guys that. 15 played slightly over par. It is a shorter pin, so maybe it plays even. It played 0.12 under over there at 16. By the way, the wind direction, I believe, is about the same. So if that's true, these aren't going to move all that much, but maybe it goes closer to 0.15 under. And then 18, slightly easier. Maybe it's 0.55 under par. So you can see we're talking about just slight adjustments when it comes to those averages. Nothing that's really going to throw off your process all that much. Going back to the pin sheet in general, I would say that these pins aren't going to adjust our scoring average much, if at all. I would say, if anything, they're slightly easier pin locations than what we had for today. But the wind forecast is also a little bit more severe than what we had for today. So that 0.75 under par scoring average that I mentioned before is pretty much exactly where I still have it after going through some of those pin locations. So I think the birdie average might go marginally down, maybe 3.7. Bogey average might be 2.6, 2.65 per round. But those are the averages that we're going to work with out there for round 2. Fairways hit, I think it might be 7.5. Usually the fairway average doesn't get moved that much by a little bit of wind. And then your green average, The pin locations, especially on the front 9, were a little bit harder, but that's not going to move all that much. Like maybe it goes to 12.5 if some of those pins prove to be harder than we expected. But you're not going to see that much movement out there with these stat averages. So, but speaking of, let's go through some of the props that we have over here in each site. I do want to refresh Underdog, see if we have anything posted there. I know we have some stuff on Prize Picks that we can enter. And in fact, there were a few props that I was already eyeing up that we could take. So let me bring up the odds over here on Fanduel. Looks like we're good to go there. We got them on Caesars there for birdies. And then here are some of the strokes props that we can look at in Draftkings. Is northeast the typical wind? It bumps around a whole bunch out on these like coastal islands. So I wouldn't say that there's like a distinct trade wind. I know Kapalua, they had one that they usually have, but I don't know, man. I'm not a local, so I wouldn't know that kind of stuff. And then we just went through some of the pin locations and that kind of stuff. But if you're talking wind direction, I'm not a local. I'm not somebody that's played this golf course. So I don't have that kind of insight for you. I can't tell you that the wind direction is the exact same. So you can see over here from today, it was there in that southeast direction. It's the same exact wind direction for tomorrow. So if you take these averages, you take how it played today and apply it to tomorrow, it's pretty much going to be an exact copy and paste. The one added caveat is that Friday's wind forecast is like 2 to 3 miles an hour higher. So you might want to adjust for that a little bit in your model. So let's go through a few props I was looking at. So the first one that caught my eye, partially because he's the first player on the board, was Hideki Matsuyama's under on strokes because he was minus 165 for his under here in DraftKings. No idea what he is over here on FanDuel, but I'm assuming like minus 150 for his under. Yeah, you can see minus 150 for his under over here. Doesn't really matter what he is on Caesars. They're the biggest slapdicks out of all of them. But if he's minus 150, minus 165 for his under, you might want to consider taking it over here for an even money spot. And part of the reason I like this prop as well is because Hideki played pretty sustainably out there for round number 1, shot -3 in similar conditions. And if anything, had the slightly harder side of the draw there in the PM wave. You can see he lost off the tee, but he did gain over 2 strokes on approach. And though last week his putter was on fire, he was gaining like 4 strokes around. Didn't quite have that out there for Thursday, but did gain just under a stroke per round over there on the green. So this is a very flat shots gained profile. Like there's not one category that was absolutely carrying him. You didn't see like 3 shots gained around the green. You're not gaining 4 strokes putting, which is something that's pretty hard to back up. This is the kind of stat profile where he could actually go out there and improve on it out there for round 2. So I kind of like the fact that he's teeing off early. I like the fact that he got a win last week, got the first round out of the way after having that win. A lot of times you have that let down the first round back, and you didn't really have that with Hideki. So, I feel a little bit better about his chances now that we got that out of the way. So yeah, the under 67.5 was something that I was eyeing up, especially as a plus EV value. So I didn't have a chance to go through a ton of guys here on the board. And his over on birdies was also minus 145 over. So just to show you that, you can see Hideki's there at minus 145. A few of the other lower tier players are actually just under there at 4.5 birdies. They don't have a line for Tom Kim on the board, but 4.5 for him. He's a relatively high percentage birdie maker. Was something that I was eyeing up. And you had guys like Eric Cole at 4 I was looking at. Some of the other higher birdie percentage guys in the field, like a Harry Hall, he's top 5 on the PGA Tour when it comes to his birdie or better percentage. He could be a potential look there at 4 birdies, because if I think the average is going to stay around 3.7 per round, this is a relatively weak field event, being 144 players, especially down towards the bottom half of the field. It drops off rather quickly. Somebody like Harry Hall is an elite tier player in this kind of field, and he's already a top 5 birdie maker on all the PGA Tour. So just to show you guys what I'm talking about, I do want to bring up the PGA Tour site just so I can cite some of these stats for all of you. I know them off the top of my head. I know you guys don't, so I'll make sure to show you guys where I'm pulling all these from. But yeah, Harry Hall, I mean, if he's up there with Scotty Scheffler, Wyndham Clark, and birdie percentage and like elite tier fields, and let alone this week. So just to show you that, Keith Mitchell's number 2, Harry Hall's there at number 3. The, I guess, worry with Harry Hall would be the fact that he went so low over there in round number 1. But he did it, I guess, actually, he kind of did it in a sketchy way, I guess. You can see he gained a bunch around the green and gained a bunch of the putter. I was going to say that he was okay with his ball striking, which is true. I mean, he was about an even, a neutral player out there with his ball striking. But when you gain almost all your strokes around the green with the putter, that is a tough scene. It's something that is, it makes it kind of tough to want to go back to him the next day. So it's actually take Harry Hall out of there. It's a good thing we checked that, because what we would rather see is somebody that's doing it with the ball striking. And I can tell you that Eric Cole had a pretty good ball striking day. So maybe he's a better play to go over there and take for this. Just to show you, right, gained off the tee, gained on approach, did gain with the putter too. So he was very consistent across all 4 stat categories. The unfortunate part is that he doesn't rank nearly as high is what you have over there. So he was number 70 as opposed to number 3 on the PGA Tour. So maybe that makes up for it. Maybe it doesn't, but let's do some more line shopping here. So get guys like Cam Davis there at 4. Looking for a few other like high birdie percentage guys. I believe Tom Hoagie's towards the top end of birdie percentage. Let's actually just check. So we're looking at 2024, by the way. 2025 is useless since it's only a 1 event sample size and has like only 60 players in it. But if we go through this on here, we don't have any lines for these guys. Yeah, nothing for like a Burns, Wesley Bryan. They're not even playing this week. The first guy that I recognized that was on the board, McNeely, does he have one at 4? I didn't see one. Yeah, no McNeely line, it looks like, for there at 4 birdies. I'm trying to find the first guy on here that's at 4 birdies. No Matty Schmid, no Justin Lauer. We have an Echeverria line. Unfortunately not. So yeah, they're not giving us a lot of those players. And the only one that they posted that's really up there is Harry Hall, and his shots gained metrics suck. So that's a little bit of a tough scene, but let's see who the next best option would be. It might be a Ben Griffin there at 37. Could be. Let's see who else is on the board. So Davis Thompson, I don't think they had anything posted. Steven Yeager, does he have a line? I don't see anything for Steven Yeager. So let's deep dive a little bit of Ben Griffin here. I do like Ben Griffin at this golf course. I can tell you that he had a good round today. It's just how did he do it with the shots gained metrics? So he gained off the tee, gained about 2 strokes out there in approach, and then lost out there with the putter, which is exactly what we're looking for in a player. We want somebody that can go out there and have sustainable round from day to day. And the best way to do it is how you're hitting the golf ball. Sometimes putts go in even when they're not supposed to. Sometimes you hit a perfect putt and ends up lipping out. A lot of that comes down to luck and variance. The other side of it, just setting up those birdie looks, is really what you can control as a golfer. So that's why I'm so fixated. That's why I always talk about the shots gained ball striking, shots gained off the tee, shots gained approach, because that's what you can actually control as a golfer and what we should really focus on as handicappers. And yeah, Ben Griffin did a great job with that today. So he could be a potential play there at 4 birdies. If we continue to go down this birdie list, I'm just trying to find somebody else. So yeah, JT Poston, I don't think he had a line posted. Yeah, nothing out there for JT Poston. So yeah, a lot of the guys that I would have hoped to have there at 4 aren't towards the top of this list. There's Tom Kim there at number 53. Did not mean to click his name there. My bad, guys. Let's go back to good old Tom Kim here at number 53. Why is it not loading? That's right. We're on the wrong season. So yeah, don't forget to do that, by the way. Make sure you're on 2024 before you're going through your stats. The next guy on the list that we could really even go through looks to be like a burger here at like number 69 on the list. So maybe birdies are better isn't the best way to go about the board, but based on what we've seen so far, like these are the best 3 props that we've seen on the board. Let's go to a few others. So birdie better matchups, never my favorite, but we'll go through them here. A Hideki versus Ann, probably not. Ann makes a shit ton of birdies too. Steven Yeager versus Tom Kim, that's pretty close to a 50-50 actually. Yeah, these matchups, because they're 0.5 matchups, I've got to love them to want to go out there and take them because a tie would be a loss with that 0.5 attached. So I'm probably staying away from most of these. In fact, the plus EV play on a lot of these matchups is to take the under, because if they end up tying out there with their birdie projection, you win over here on Prize Picks. So if I was going to look at any for an under, like a Siwoo versus Echeverria, Siwoo didn't have his best stuff. Echeverria did play well over there for round 1. Like maybe you take an under there. I'm not going to do it, but like that's maybe a lean I'd be looking at. If I was looking at a few other groups on here, like maybe this Grillo group, like McNeely's a great player, but he's more of like a bogey avoider than going out there and making a whole lot of birdies. I'm probably staying away from the birdie or better matchup board, but I guess that's a few ideas there. The fairway average was a little bit lower this year than what we historically see. It was about 7.5 per round out there today. I don't think it's going to move very much out there for round number 2, but these guys we have down here at 7.5 are your lower tier drivers. And then guys like a Connors, McCarthy, Bradley, etc., are all a little bit better than your average drivers. So I tend to agree with a lot of the pricing on here. If we get a little bit of like overnight rain, maybe rain over there in the morning, maybe we take an over on fairways, hoping that they play a little bit softer than what they did for round one. But they were running out quite a bit, and they were firmer than what we're used to seeing. So if anything, the plus EV play might actually be unders over there on fairways. And then let's look at pars or better. So nothing posted for greens and regulation quite yet, but for pars or better, they've got guys at 2.5. And unlike round number one, where the guys at 2.5 are like Snedeker, Webb Simpson, like lower tier guys like Zach Johnson that were at like 2.5 bogeys. Now they've got some legit guys like Matt Kuchar's a pretty good bogey avoider. Keith Mitchell, Patrick Rogers, they're, not studs, but at least higher tier players than what you had on the board before. And just to remind yourselves, the average was 2.57 per round, which was about the exact same as what we had last year. So it's not like the average changed at all, yet they're giving us higher quality players here at 2.5. So I would argue that you could take some overs on pars or better here, and it might make some sense. So I haven't looked at the board quite yet, at least in terms of the value, but I do want to see what they have here. So look at this, like Denny is minus 170 under. Is he one of the guys posted? So he's not one of the guys they have posted here, but like if Denny's minus 170 under, then like surely we're going to have a few other guys we can take. So let's look at this. Eric Cole's minus 130 for his under. He is one of the guys that we have posted here. So I'm going to throw it in there for now, but maybe even some better value that we can find here. Let's see, Keegan minus 180, Russell minus, he's actually down there at 1.5. It juiced towards the over. So out of the guys we have posted here, I guess we'll do the research on which one has the best bogey avoidance over the last year. I know Eric Cole, he makes a fair amount of bogeys. So if we can find somebody with a higher ranking, I'd rather go with them, but he is at least minus 130 for his under. So let's go to 2024. Let's see what we've got. So I want to look at P. Rogers. I want to look at Kuchar, and I want to look at Cam Davis. I feel like those are our best chance here. So let's go Kuch. Kuch is 50. Let's go Cam Davis. Cam Davis, 159. Okay, so throw that one out of there. P. Rogers we'll look at. Kuchar 50 is pretty good. So we'll look at Rogers, and then I guess Mitchell and EVR. Like I doubt it, but okay, let's go Mitchell, EVR, Rogers. Mitchell 56. Okay, it's actually pretty decent. Let's look at Rogers 36. Okay, so that's the best ranking that we have out of all of them. Then let's look at Eric Van Rooyen. He's number 66. So if we were doing this purely based on last year's rankings, Patrick Rogers, believe it or not, would be the best out of all of these to take. So let's just think about this a little bit. Let's go through the stats. So Rogers was a decent bet. Same thing with Kuchar. Heck, even Mitchell and Eric Van Rooyen, I would say, was decent. But let's see who has the best, most sustainable shots gained metric. So let's get Harry Hall out of there and let's find them individually. So Matt Kuchar lost on approach, gained a bunch putting, and he was sloppy out there round one. So Kuch maybe not the best option. Let's look at Mitchell. Mitchell lost on approach, but gained off the tee, then lost with his putter. He was a little bit cleaner about it and would have gone under this line. Let's look at Patrick Rogers. Rogers gained off the tee, gained on approach, and then lost with a short game. This is probably the best stat profile that we've seen so far. And he has the best ranking out of all of them. So yeah, if we were going to do this, these three props would make a lot of sense. Let me see what the payout on these two would be. So yeah, it'd be 2.75x if we took those two together. We don't have the plus EV value that we quite have on Hideki. Just to remind you guys, right, he was minus 165 for his under and prize picks. But I would argue guys like Ben Griffin here or Patrick Rogers here for the over at 15.5 pars or better are also really solid values over there for tomorrow. So for the sake of the live stream, we're going to go with this 3-leg slip over here on prize picks. It pays 4.75x. So obviously a little bit less than the normal 5x that you'd get for a 3-man, but it's correlated, right? You have 3 positive stance plays there together. And just to check on the tee times, Hideki goes off relatively early. I know Ben Griffin is a PM guy, but he at least is a birdie line as opposed to the strokes line. So I feel a little bit better about that. And let's look at Patrick Rogers. So yeah, Patrick Rogers is a PM tee time, but if we circle back to the averages from today, it was just a marginal difference between morning and afternoon. So let's go ahead and take those 3 over there on Prize Picks. And I'm not sure if we're going to have the underdog board posted quite yet. If not, we'll probably have to hold off on that out there until rounds 3 and 4. But for all the different pieces of exposure that I'm entering out here in Underdog Prize Picks, you can obviously check it out over there on my Patreon page. Link in the description of the video to go out there and join over there. Only $15 a month gives you access to all the prop slips I'm entering. Not only that, but all the reasoning behind all the slips I'm getting to help make you guys a better of golf. And they're going to teach you guys what to look for in players, what I'm using out there in my process, and then also getting all the stat averages and weather forecasts out there for each round as well. So you can stay informed on how to go out there and research for every single round to give you all the tools at your disposal, as well as what I'm doing out there for each round as well, which, you can pick and choose pieces to go out there and tail. You can tail all the exposure if you want to. I leave that up to your own discretion or how you used to use my content. Heck, even if you want to fade every single play that I go with, you can go out there and do so. I have a good track record. I can show you guys my profit and loss. It is rather impressive over the last few years. You probably won't want to fade my plays, but hey, if you think I'm going to go on a cold run, that sort of thing, right? Your own prerogative, right? You go out there and do your own thing. I'm not going to tell you what to do with your own hard-earned money. So that's what I'm doing over there in Prize Picks. Tail whatever you guys feel like tailing there with those 3. I feel pretty solid about all 3 of them. But let's go over here to the prop side of things here on Draftkings and Fanduel. So what I want to do, let's look at some 3 balls, some matchups, that sort of thing, and try and find some plays. And mostly with the 3 balls, just because we're still in threesomes over here over the next day. So let's go to, is it matchups? Yeah, DraftKings has it set up a little bit differently. Maybe they don't have the 3 balls posted yet. Here they are. They were hiding for me there for just a second. And then just for the sake of checking the odds, I also want to bring them up over here on Caesars William Hill. So just bear with me 5-10 seconds while I do so. There we go. There's the 3 balls. We should be all set. Where are we at? What do I think about Clanton tomorrow? Good question, Justin. So his shots gained metrics in round 1 kind of were like Patrick Rogers, where off the tee on approach, he was decent. You can see in both categories, he gained 0.012 shots. So he's literally as close to neutral as humanly possible in those 2 categories. And he was about neutral in the 2 short game categories too. So about as average as humanly possible. I would say I think he's a much better player than what most people do. So I think he could play well tomorrow. It's funny to see Hideki at 67 on a Prize Picks, but a pick 60s at 66.5. Yeah, I don't get it. But hey, we'll take it on Prize Picks, right? What's going on, Antonio? How do I find bogeys on Caesars? So it's on their normal page where you can see like the round scores, all of that. You just got to scroll to the way right. They have fairways on there. They've got birdies. They've got pars or better lines over there as well. So yeah, it's all hidden to the right side. And just to show you what I'm talking about, when I say the right side, I mean like over here to the right. So when you first click on it, it's going to show this exactly. If you click on groups, it starts to show you more to the right. So if you click that, it starts to show you more. You would think that you could scroll, but I guess you can't. So that's the way you do it. You got to click them to reveal the other options. You don't know if I talked about Horschel yet, but what are my thoughts? He battled today and his strokes line 68.5. I think that he's a grinder. So if you're going to trust somebody even after a bad round, I think you could do a whole lot worse than Billy Horschel. And 68.5 does seem a little high. You said he loved the under. I wonder if they have his line posted anywhere. I would imagine he's juiced under, right? Like that would be what I would guess on Billy Horschel at 68.5. But let's just double check for completion. So he's about even money, it looks like, over here on DraftKings. Yeah, I like the under. If you can get him at like minus 110, I'd probably bet it. Heck, you get him plus 100, I'd be all over it. Ties on unders for better or better matchups win? Yes. And it's these 0.5s. So it's a difference. If it has the 0 on it, it would be a tie. But you see this 0.5 right here? It's not a 0.0. That's the difference. This 0.5 means to go over that line that these guys have to make one more birdie than their opponent. Because how they scored on Prize Picks is however many birdies more that the guy pictured makes is their score. So like, for example, if he made 3 more birdies than Benny Ann, his score, like you'd see on your slip, would be 3. So if it's 0, right, if he ends up tying him, then it's under. Yeah, that's they just introduced it. So if you didn't notice, it's not your fault. Like they've only done it over the last month. You kind of forgot how much you need to hit the ball in the fairways to score here, rough as a bitch. Yeah, I've been looking at drivers pretty much all week, and I don't even think it's like you have to hit the fairways. Like pretty much everyone's hitting a good amount of fairways. It's that you just can't bomb driver. Like if your MO is just like, I'm going to hit driver every hole. If you're Thurston Lawrence, for example, who, by the way, has full tour status this year, you're going to see him a whole lot here in 2025. And by the way, he's like one of my favorite players in the world. So you're going to hear me talk about Thurston Lawrence like every week. He would never play here because you can't hit driver outside of like 5-6 holes. So yeah, I like good drivers of the golf ball, but even if you're not a good driver, you could have a good driving week because of how much you're laying up. Like, for example, Patrick Rogers, he's not a very accurate driver. He's not horribly inaccurate off the tee, but at a course like this, he hits a shit ton of fairways with how much he's laying up. You were on the app and couldn't find it. Yeah, if you're on your computer, it's easier to find. On the app, I've actually never used it before, so I can't help you there, but it seems like you found it, so good stuff there. All right, let's go through a few 3-balls. So if you have any questions over there for props, you can let me know. And I guess it's worth noting, obviously I'm going to enter more props before lock. I can't go over everything here on the live stream. I've got to keep some of it on my Patreon page. But like these 68.5s, I know we had a question about Horschel. There are a bunch on here that I think make sense for unders. Like, I guess just a point went out. Like Cam Davis at 68.5. I don't know about that. I don't know, historically, he's probably a top 20 player in this field. I don't think that's a hot take. 69 for somebody like Patrick Rogers. Like, I don't necessarily agree with that. Like, he's a better player than that. And then, heck, even Kuchar, yeah, they have him here at 69 strokes. I know he didn't have his best ball striking out there from round number 1, but -1 at a course that he's historically been very good at. I mean, -1's the scoring average out there from round number 1. Like, you would think that Matt Kuchar, who's been decent in 2024, last 3-4 months, he's actually played pretty well, would be somebody you'd be looking for an under. So, yeah, in general, I think there's some unders to be had. The strokes board being a whole stroke higher than what you had for round 1 is, I just don't really get it. Like, I thought the pricing for round 1 was pretty decent. That's why I didn't go overboard on my exposure. I only had 3 slips that I entered, which is it's actually pretty light for what I usually do. I mean, I would have maybe bumped it up 0.5 with the slightly higher wins, but to move it an entire stroke it seems like an overreaction. Just to put the bow over there on the prop side. And the cut, by the way, I think will be -3. And any picks for fairways under, I'll look at them real quick. So if I was going to go in that direction, which by the way would help out with the payout, if you took those 3 props you took before, even just a couple of them, and then take an under, it would help you out. The main one I'd be looking at would be like Daniel Berger, I guess, because Daniel Berger, he is a historically accurate driver, but he's not like an elite level driver. He's not your Tom Kims or Russell Henleys when it comes to the accuracy. Historically, Daniel Berger is like a 30 to 50 guy when it comes to that driving accuracy. And to hit 10 fairways, that's going to be gaining 2.5 fairways to the field. That's a pretty tough thing to do. So it would either be a D Berger or... yeah, it would probably be D Berger. I was going to say or one of these bottom 2 guys, like a Pendrith or a Harry Hall, but yeah, we'll go Berger. I just, getting to 10 is a whole different thing than getting to just 8 fairways. So that's probably what I would say, Chad. Hopefully that helps. What do I think the cut will be? -3 is what I would say, Antonio. I've got it at -3, -4. Data Golf has it at -2, -3. I don't really get why these sites think it's going to play like horribly difficult tomorrow. It's only going to be like 3-4 miles an hour difference. So yeah, I think at least -3, and I think there's a good chance it gets to -4. Thoughts on McNeely for the under 67.5, and you got plus money for that? I am stunned that it's plus money under, because round 1, I mean, his odds on DraftKings were like -145 for the under. So yeah, dude, if I could get plus 110 odds or plus 105, dude, the day that Hard Rock Bet starts offering those strokes props, it's going to be a beauty for me, dude. Heck, I like Underdog Prize Picks, but if I could bet single leg props, I'd be betting a much higher unit size. And the ROI on betting like plus 105s, plus 110s, plus 115s on props where you can find like a 55 to 60% edge, which is normally what I'm looking for in props, is massive. You can make a living betting props like that, a 55% hit rate on plus money props like that. That's why I'm just waiting for them to open shop down here in Florida. So we'll see. Hopefully it comes by at some point. And historically, I'll just tell you that the hit rate I have for these props on PGA is 61%. So it's obviously a soft market. It was even softer before the last year. But yeah, if they give us those plus money props, dude, I can't wait. I'm going to put it this way. The bankroll is going to get a lot larger if they end up doing that. Just to me, right? They'll make money off other people, but they're definitely going to bleed a little bit to me if they do so. Let's go through a few 3-balls on here. So what I usually like to do for 3-balls, I don't spend a whole bunch of time going through them. They're usually just sprinkle bets I go out there and throw in. I usually try and find some long shots to take, though. I'm not a huge fan of taking like minus money people, even guys that are like plus 110 to plus 150 for a 3-ball. I'm mostly looking at that second or third player and trying to find somebody that has a shot for an upset. And the best players to do that on out here in round 2 are guys that hit the ball well, had good shots, gained ball striking, but could not make a putt for their life. So let's just go through the leaderboard here and find some of those players. Sepp Straka would be a good example, but he's going to be one of the favorites in the group that he's playing in. Just to go through this and find a better example, a Bryce Garnett might be a player to look at. So let's find the group with Bryce Garnett. Is he even going to have one posted? Might not. So yeah, ideally, I want to find the group with Bryce Garnett here and then bet on him to win against the other 2 players. I'm not even sure who he's playing against. I was hoping to be able to find that while bringing through this. Let me see if he's on one of these other sites. Oh, if they don't have his 3-balls posted, that's going to be kind of disappointing because he sets up perfectly for the kind of bet I'm talking about. If not, because we'll talk about why I wanted to look at a Bryce Garnett bet. The reason being, of course, I'll bring him here so we can isolate him, is he gained off the tee, he gained out this approach play, and he lost with this short game. And if you know anything about Bryce Garnett's skill set, he's a pretty decent putter out here on Bermuda grass. So if anything, you might expect him to gain strokes over here on these Bermuda greens. And if he does that, continues to ball strike it like he did, could be a really low round for Bryce. So that's why I wanted to see if we could find something there. But unfortunately, they're not offering his props. Let's look at Eric Cole then, and I guess we'll look at the Sepp Straka group while we're at it here. So let's start off with Straka, then we'll look at the Eric Cole group after. So Sepp Straka is plus 185. You also have Nick Taylor in that group at plus 245. Sepp Straka might be a vibe here. I really like how he sets up. I mean, we're going to have to look at Corey Connors and all, but he's plus 190 actually over here on this site. So maybe you go with the plus 190 as opposed to the plus 185 over there in DraftKings. Corey Connors, by the way, I already know his shots gained profile because I was looking at it earlier. He lost 4.4 strokes putting. Now, his approach play was decent. He was okay off the tee, but his 1.4 strokes ball striking is nowhere close what we have with Sepp Straka, right? Sepp Straka, if you take a look at his ball striking stats, he gained over 4 strokes in that category. So, yeah, I still like Sepp Straka there. I think that's probably a solid bet. And then what was the other one we wanted to go through? Was another one of those top ball strikers. I believe, yeah, Eric Cole, right? We wanted to see what we could find for Eric Cole. See who he's playing against. So Eric Cole's going against Bud Cauley and Bridgman. And he's only plus 140. Yeah, I would take this too. So I know I said I don't really like going with like big favorites out here for these 3-balls, but when it's a plus 140, I mean, that's not all that terrible. You have some of these favorites that are like plus 110 or plus 120, and he's going against Bud Cauley and Jacob Bridgman, who don't really impress you all that much when it comes to the shots gained. To show you Bud Cauley, he's just kind of average across the board. He shot a -2 round. Nothing that you're really getting all that much scared of. And then if we take a look at Jacob Bridgman as well, so let's type in Bridge here. You can see he lost strokes off the tee and he gained nearly 5 strokes around the green. So that, of course, comes down to variance luck when it comes to chipping in. So yeah, Cauley probably the one I'm more worried about between him and Bridgman. But yeah, even Cauley, like I'd much rather have the skill set of an Eric Cole, who, just to circle back on that, has been absolutely killing it over the first day. So let's go ahead and throw him in there as well. Who else can be fine, though? So I like to do this backwards. I don't even like to really look at the odds. I like to just, kind of check the odds after to see if it's something I want to bet. So I want to identify players I think are going to go off tomorrow. So if we're going to go through this a little bit further, let's try and find somebody that has some putting regression that could be coming. Justin Lauer could be a look. A Patrick Rogers could be a look as well. So let's see if they have anything posted for those two. So they do have Rogers. He's at plus 150. So we'll at least throw it in the shopping cart for right now. And then who was the other one? It was Patrick Rogers we were looking at, and then Justin Lauer. And yeah, I'm not thinking that Justin Lauer has his up, but you never know, I guess. Yeah, so no Justin Lauer 3 balls posted, but let's deep dive this Patrick Rogers one that we were just looking at. So he's going against Streelman and Mark Hubbard. So let's start with researching Streelman. Streelman was okay ball striking, and he shot -1, which for him is a pretty good day, all things considered, but not an overly impressive profile. Then the other one was Hubbard, right? So let's look at Mark Hubbard. Hubbard was also pretty decent across the board. So kind of like the last group, I'm more worried about Mark Hubbard, but even his stat profile, and he's just slightly into the positive, and 3 out of the 4 isn't anything that's completely scaring you off the spot. And the reason why you'd like Patrick Rogers more is he played a little bit better out there for round 1, but it was all because of his shots gained off the tee, right? Gained 2 strokes in that category, drove the ball beautifully. I don't know. I think we're going to go with just the top 2 as the bets we're taking for the stream. But if you want to add in a third 3 ball as well, that Patrick Rogers one probably isn't the worst idea. And see anything else? You got Eckroat versus Bobby Mack at +100. So I'm assuming that's a strokes matchup that you're looking at. I would say, let's look at the stats. I'm a sucker for Bobby Mack, man. I just think he's a really good player. But let's look through it. So Bobby Mack gaining off the tee, gaining on approach. Okay. I think that's pretty solid. Let's look at Eckroat, though. Pretty much the same thing. Gaining off the tee, gaining on approach. Oof. I would say the +100 kind of makes sense there just because I think Bobby Mack's the better player. So that's a stay away for me, but, do what you want, obviously. You see that you mentioned McNeely, and he's at 68 flat on Prize Picks. Ooh. Yeah, right. He's looking at the under at 67.5. 68 for the under. There were actually a few guys at 68 that kind of caught my eye. So I know I was pointing out a few guys a little bit further down the board that I was looking at before. But yeah, like 68 McNeely, it's not a terrible prop. Honestly, this Luke Clanton at 68.5 is kind of just screaming to get played out there tomorrow. So we'll have to see. That 68 for McNeely is not terrible either, though. And they said, thoughts on Pendrith? Lost over 3 strokes putting, what was good everywhere else. I'm playing him in Showdown. I am expecting a little bit of a bounce back. And yeah, I think for props, you could play him too. I think he's at 68.5 over here, which, oh my goodness. Yeah, I've got to say, this Taylor Pendrith prop is probably one of my favorites that we have on the entire board. In fact, I know we don't have a line for comparison, but how the hell is he at 68.5? Like, he's maybe not quite a Russell Henley, but he's the same sort of player as Sepp, if not better. And look at that. Sepp's -160 for his under at 68.5. Speaking of, do we have a line for Sepp posted? Yeah, he's down there at 68 strokes. I guess the PMT time would be the only thing I can think of for why he's there at 68.5. Yeah, dude, if I was going to take anything, that's the prop I would take. Alrighty, guys, that's all I've got for the live stream for round 2, though. Getting a little bit late here. Need to get some of my last-second exposure in. Then, of course, best of luck over there for your exposure on Friday. That's over there on the GPP side. Go out there, take something down for me, or on the prop side of thing on Underdog or Prize Picks. Hopefully, you can make it a day into the green and one to remember here heading into the weekend. It's Friday, Feel Good Friday, Aloha Friday over there in Hawaii. So go ahead, celebrate with all your family and friends, and hopefully we can run good over there for tomorrow.